Long before the name Lucifer became associated with darkness, fear, or rebellion, there was another story, older, stranger. A story that begins not in hell but in heaven. And the Bible only gives fragments. A few verses in Isaiah, a passage in Ezekiel, a glimpse in Revelation. But for thousands of years, people have stared at those scattered pieces and wondered what happened to the being who once stood closest to the throne of God. It's because Lucifer was never introduced as a monster. He was introduced as beautiful. Some ancient descriptions speak of him covered in precious stones, radiant like fire and polished gold. Not a creature crawling in shadows, but one surrounded by music, brilliance, and honor. The kind of presence that made other beings stop when he entered the courts of heaven. And imagine that for a moment, Nan, before there was temptation in Eden, before there was Satan, there was a being created in perfection, a guardian, a bearer of light, and maybe that's what makes the story unsettling. And evil didn't begin ugly. It began glorious. And the old texts describe heaven almost like a living kingdom of light. Not clouds and silence the way paintings often show it. More alive than earth has ever been. Countless angels moving in harmony, creation unfolding under the command of God. Stars burning into existence, galaxies stretching across endless darkness. And somewhere in the middle of that beauty stood Lucifer's. And some traditions say his very presence reflected worship. That music itself seemed woven into him. Others believed he held authority over entire ranks of angels. We don't know exactly how much is poetry and how much is literal, but nearly every ancient interpretation agrees on one thing. Now, Lucifer wasn't small, mattered. There's a line in Ezekiel that says, "You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created till wickedness was found in you." And that line changes the whole story. And because it suggests something terrifying, the fall of Lucifer wasn't sudden, and wickedness was found in him, as if it slowly appeared. Quietly, internally, and honestly, that feels more human than people want to admit. And most destruction doesn't begin with violence. It begins with a thought nobody else can hear, a private pride, a craving to be seen differently, to rise higher, to take what was never meant to belong to you. And Nanasiah describes Lucifer saying in his heart, "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." Not against God at first and like God, and that's important, because the ancient story isn't really about a creature wanting chaos. It's about a created being becoming consumed with his own reflection. Maybe he looked at his own brilliance long enough that he forgot it had been given to him, and maybe admiration slowly turned into entitlements, and maybe worship became unbearable because every song reminded him there was still someone above him. No one knows exactly when the shift happened, but at some point, heaven experienced something it had never known before. And according to the old story, Lucifer didn't fall alone, and Revelation speaks of a rebellion. A war in heaven, angels divided, loyalty fractured. One of the most mysterious images in the Bible says a third of the stars were swept from the sky, and for centuries, many believed those stars represented angels who followed Lucifer into revolt. And think about how persuasive he must have been. This wasn't some forgotten outcast screaming from the edges of heaven. This was someone admired, trusted, powerful enough to convince others that the order of creation itself should change. And maybe that's the real danger of pride. And it rarely arrives looking dangerous, and it often arrives looking inspiring. There's something tragic hidden underneath all of this, too. Because the story of Lucifer is in many ways the story of losing everything while believing you deserve more, the presence of God. Gone the beauty of heaven. Gone honor he once carried. Gone. And yet the rebellion continued. And that's the strange thing about pride once it fully takes hold. Even after destruction begins, it keeps whispering that surrender would be worse. And in so the being once associated with light became associated with accusation, deception, and ruin. The name Satan would eventually emerge from that fall. The adversary. But before all of that, before the serpent in Eden, before temptation entered the human story, there was Lucifer in the brightest figure in heaven. And according to the ancient story, the first being who looked at God's throne and thought, "I want that instead."